giving the example of the budget bill, if that doesn't go through quickly after Christmas, then they're in real trouble.
Carney is an utter embarrassment. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Donald Trump with America, among many other countries, signing a new alliance, and Canada is not included. We got a bunch of stories here. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we've got a change.org petition here to demanding Michael Ma resign. This is up to 32,000, nearly 33,000 votes right now. And while we're not going to be talking about this nonsense for much of this episode, we do have some important digging here. So we've got this one from Sam Cooper. He posted his blog from last year. He was carefully pointing out essentially China has been trying to plant people in our government, not just a liberal government, in all governments, because they want to have their spies essentially who can defect and do the bidding of the CCP whenever they want. It says here, CSIS assesses that the PRC, the People's Republic of China, is using a calibrated and multifaceted pressure campaign to avoid the extradition of Huawei Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou to United States. Beijing's strategy is very likely centered on exerting personalized political pressure on Canada's leadership. And with that, we've got it right here. So it says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2019's election seeking to halt Meng Wanzhou's extradition to the United States by backing some non-liberal candidates and running operations primarily designed to exert political and personal pressure on Canada's political leadership. As in the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Republic of China, have been trying to plant people in our government because they want to have control. And what do we have here from Andy Lee? She dug up this one. What names do you see here in English? Tim Hodgson, and who else? Michael Ma. I stuck it into translate. I'm not sure if this is correct, but it says the grand opening ceremony attracted many distinguished guests and customers from the community. Guests in attendance are, and then it names these people: Tim Hodgson, Michael Ma, etc., etc. And what else do we have here? It's Tim Hodgson. And who else is here? It's Michael Ma. There's a bunch of situations like this where not only is liberals and Michael Ma, it's also Michael Ma connected to more Chinese events. The government of China has done a lot of work here to try to plant people in all the political parties in Canada, so no matter which one won, they would have some sort of influence and control. That's what this looks like to me. Will we see more people defecting to the Liberals? If we start going through all the different candidates, not just Conservatives, it could be NDP, Bloc, and see which ones have connections to China, well, there's a lot of work there, but we would probably get our answer. Who has been at these events with the Liberals, pro-China message, the CCP favoring these people? This is government and electoral influence. Something else to think about. This guy just got elected. He's been there 8 months and then he's going to defect? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Anyone who defects knows that their political career is most likely over. Chris D'Entremont, he's pissed off half the people in Acadia, and the other half, are they really going to trust him over there? I mean, if they have to vote for the guy, they will, but I mean, most likely Mark Carney, when he has a chance, he's going to chuck his butt to the curb and get someone else in there because he knows he's a defector. He can't be trusted. Same with this guy, but Carney's going to use them to try to get an unelected majority government, but really, these guys' political careers are over. And this guy's 8 months in there. The question is, what was he offered? Who offered him something? Did China offer him something? Money? Are there big bank accounts waiting for people who defect and switch parties to benefit other parties? This event with Tim Hodgson and Michael Ma comes from Shutterlux. They're opening their showroom in Markham. This was August 18th, 2025. Now, what I'm wondering here is this a way for these guys to communicate out of the House of Commons? Tim Hodgson and Michael Ma, they can step away from everything, the crowds, cameras, and just privately talk about defecting. Was Tim Hodgson trying his best to sway him over at this time? Was he already in on it? Did China have influence in Michael Ma running in the Markham riding, the one that Joe Tay had to give up after China went after him and his family? Then China gave the wink wink nudge nudge to Tim Hodgson. It's all too fishy. Moving ahead, we've got this bombshell news. USA launches new alliance called Pax Silica to build resilient supply chains for critical minerals and advanced tech. And who's a part of this? Well, there's no Canadian flag. You can see it already. USA, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Netherlands, Australia, the UK, and the UAE. This is a supply chain, as you see here, securing the silicon supply chain. And Canada's not a part of this. We have tons of this here. It's not like we don't have a supply of silica in Canada. Canada went woke and got excluded. Go woke, go broke at national level. Zero exceptions. Criminally incompetent. Yeah, that's what's happened. This is an absolute embarrassment to Mark Carney. Once again, no Canadian flag. So here's the initiative. Pax Silica is a US-led initiative. Silicon supply chain from critical minerals, energy inputs, advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, AI, infrastructure, and logistics. And yet, Canada's not involved in this. So once again, this is an absolute embarrassment. As this comment says here, Canada prefers staying in the business of natural stupidity instead of building artificial intelligence. Looking at the alliance here, we've got the US State Department announced on the 11th the Pax Silica initiative looking to secure critical minerals for advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, and artificial intelligence. intelligence infrastructure. Once again, all the countries here, if we look at this article here, U.S. launches pact for AI supply chains to face China, because that's essentially what this is. Pushing back against China. You also notice there's no Taiwan in here, which is very interesting. Taiwan was a guest speaker, but they were not added to this. I don't know if it's because America doesn't want to rock the boat with China, and China doesn't consider Taiwan a country, everyone else does. It says here, China has quickly taken dominant position in the race for resources in the fast-growing area of artificial intelligence, mining around 70% of key rare earths. Now, China does most of the processing of critical minerals. That's the problem. But looking down here, we do have other countries participating in the meetings in Washington on supply chains without formally joining the Pax Silica. You can see where the United Arab Emirates, Canada, and the Netherlands. We look back at the announcement. United Arab Emirates and the Netherlands have joined. So Canada was there. They were a guest speaker. Same with Taiwan, but Taiwan didn't join, probably for political reasons. Canada, though, just gets left out in the cold. Like, this is completely embarrassing. Mark Carney is an utter failure here because Canada was a part of these talks. It wasn't like they were completely excluded, but they're not a part of this. They're basically left out of the room. Someone else who was left out of the room is India. So we have India's exclusion from the US-led Pax Silica coalition is a concrete diplomatic and economic setback with real costs for our ambitions in semiconductors. This is coming from an MP, I believe, in India. So there's a lot of moving parts here. This is embarrassing to India as well, but I mean, we're right next to America. So obviously this is much more embarrassing for Canada to not be a part of this as America is leading this initiative. And what's the number one thing that Donald Trump said he wanted to secure is critical minerals. This was the way to get a deal. Carney's not getting the deal. He's screwing over Canada right now. And America's moving on without us. I mean, we've got a map here showing global distribution of rare earth elements. I mean, look at Canada here. We're loaded with them. There's a bunch of countries that don't have any, like in Africa, once again. Some parts here in Western South America. Nicaragua, Costa Rica, all these ones here, the Caribbean, even huge parts of China and India don't. Canada has lots of areas with critical minerals. And what else do we see in the news here today? U.S. lifts sanctions on Belarusian potash, as well as releasing 123 political prisoners. This is quite the story here. So they had Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has pardoned 123 citizens of various countries in accordance with agreements reached with the United States. As reported, the head of state decided to pardon these people. These people were from the UK, USA, Lithuania, Ukraine, Latvia, Australia, and Japan. It says Nobel Peace Prize laureate Beletsky, former president candidate Viktor Babrinko, and one opposition leaders Maria Koznikova were among those released. And so what else happens with this whole agreement here? A few hours earlier, it was announced the U.S. lifted sanctions on Belarusian potash. They want more access. They said, you know what, we'll lift those sanctions. Let's do some business. You guys release some political prisoners here, and we got a deal. Once again, Canada getting screwed here. As directed by President Trump, the U.S. is lifting sanctions on potash, Cole said. I think this is a very good move for the part of U.S. for Belarusians. We're lifting them now. Carney once again left out in the dust. He could easily make a deal here. He doesn't want to make a deal. He's invested in America. He seems completely content in screwing over Canadians. Right away, the media is going after Donald Trump for this, and I thought this was a very fair comparison here by table salt. It says, so wait, it's okay for Carney to diversify our trade by cozying up with Communist Party of China, but it's unthinkable for Trump to approach Belarus after Doug Ford told the U.S. we're going to turn off their electricity. As it says here, hedging against Trump, Canada reconsiders ties with China. Well, of course they are, because Xi Jinping wanted Carney to win. He helped campaign for him. Now we're seeing all sorts of suspicious ties between Michael Ma and China and the CCP. A little too convenient. It's just a little too convenient. Tim Hodgson, Michael Ma, both at the same Chinese event here. The key question now is what's next on the table? Well, it's probably Venezuelan's oil. Will Trump be dialing back the oil that they buy from Canada? I mean, probably not, but they probably want to increase what they're getting from Venezuela, considering we're selling at bottom barrel prices. The point being here, Mark Carney could have got another deal, Keystone XL, and we could be selling more oil to America. Instead, they're likely going to be getting it from Venezuela.
We knocked out 96% of the drugs coming in by water, and now we're starting by land, and by land is a lot easier, and that's going to start happening. And we're not going to have people destroying our youth, destroying our family.
So Trump's moving his troops in to Venezuela on foot now. Really, this is a battle of oil. They want access to that oil because that secures America's future. Energy is everything on planet Earth. Without energy, you got no country. So once again, going back to the start here, Donald Trump securing critical minerals here. He needs all these countries. Who's not a serious player? It's Canada. Mark Carney, an absolute loser. This guy's running a grift to make himself rich. And either Trump knows that he's doing this and knows that he doesn't want to attach himself to Carney because he's running his net zero agenda. It looks bad for him. Or he doesn't know know he's doing this, and he just sees Carney for what he is as a net zero zealot and doesn't take the guy serious, thus he's not a part of the deal. Either way, Canada's not a part of this. It's embarrassing. Moving ahead, Mark Carney will be announcing his protege, Mark Wiseman, will be taking over the U.S. ambassadorship role. Is this a major failure? Tom Mulcair seems to think so. This is an interesting take from Tom Mulcair. Normally he's just a complete bonehead, but he has a legitimate point to make here. Mark Wiseman came out with a tweet pushing back against Quebec, his Century Initiative. Mark Wiseman retweeted Andrew Coyne, who said 100 million Canadians by 2100 may not be a federal policy, but it should be, even if it makes Quebec howl. So we have that right here. This is Mark Wiseman's account, which obviously they deleted this. Even the CBC, David Cochrane, you got Chantal Herbert or whatever, these liberals trying to defend Mark Wiseman here, but he retweeted it, thus he supports it. I mean, in the UK, if you retweet something, you can go to jail for that. With that said, Quebecers are not going to forget that kind of stuff.
So before we talk about the future, let's look back at the parliamentary session that was. The budget vote was one of the key events in this session. What else stood out to you?
Well, ever since the election, way back at the end of April, we've watched the Carney government put pressure on the bureaucracy and to say that they were going to be putting forward huge national projects to boost our gross domestic product, to counter the effects they're really hurting the Canadian economy of Trump's tariffs. So Bill C-5 came in June, even before the budget, and boy, it was such a surprise because that's the type of thing that could have been held up for years in a minority situation, but they got it through. And it's essentially giving the government free rein to push aside some of the constraints and the difficulties and the long timelines for getting big projects approved. So that worked.
It's a bill to go around liberal policy. Let's just call it what it is. That's exactly what it is. You can go around environmental regulation. They can do anything with that. It still doesn't help companies. It only helps the government. If you repeal all those bad laws, then companies can come to Canada with confidence and build big energy projects, big infrastructure projects. The liberal government is not in it for us.
Then comes the fall. Of course, the budget went through, but now the budget implementation bill has to go through, and the Conservatives, the Bloc, and the NDP for now are blocking everything with everything that they've got, every trick in the book. And there's a lot of tricks that can be played when there's a minority parliament. I saw one detail today that was revealing. I saw that Don Davies, the interim leader of the NDP, was again pleading for official party status. You know what? I think he might actually get it this time. He doesn't want to put himself in lockstep with the Liberals because that really hurt Jagmeet Singh and the NDP in the last election. But he's essentially communicating, look, we need party status. You can get us onto committees. We can actually help you. And we're going to be on side with you with a lot of your ideas. I think that Carney and the people around him are going to have to give that some serious thought because, of course, they're well short of the 12 required for official party status, but it's been done in the past. You can have that flexibility.
I don't think the NDP is going to be that dumb to follow Jagmeet off a cliff again. Who knows? Maybe they prove me wrong and they are that dumb, but I don't think they're going to do that. Sure, they might try to get this in the short term so they can start voting, and more likely they would get the official party status, vote with Carney on a few things, finish up their leadership race, get their new leader's face out there, but they don't want to be supporting the Liberals for very long because they don't want to be attached to that wagon again. That's what destroyed their party, and most of them lost their jobs. We're talking $200,000 a year salaries these people lost. So I don't think the rest of them, Heather McPherson and Jenny Kwan, whoever, want to lose their jobs too. They basically saw most of their party members go kaput. So they might use it in the short term, but not long term. They're going to want to have an election and get their seats back.
And I do think that they're going to need a dance partner. The Liberals are not going to be able to keep going the way they are now unless they have somebody on their side predictably. And I'm giving the example of the budget bill. If that doesn't go through quickly after Christmas, then they're in real trouble. And they're going to have to come to a decision as to whether or not we plunge ourselves into a spring election. Are the Conservatives ready for that right now? We saw them hiding people behind the curtains. They weren't ready to even defeat the government on the budget. They don't want an election, or at least they didn't. Is that going to change? The Bloc Québécois, feeling its oats, thinks that they can probably get some seats back from Carney. I'm not sure that that's the case, but that's certainly their thinking. So this is the backdrop. You know, it's not just the budget and the budget bill. It's what it represents in terms of a minority parliament and what we call these confidence votes that can bring down the government. I don't think that the Liberals are the type of party who want other parties to decide for them when the date of the next election is. They're going to be the ones to decide, and I think they're going to be going sooner rather than later. They think that they can get out of this minority situation and get back to a majority.
The Bloc are trying to push hard right now and separate Carney from Quebec. We saw it in the House of Commons.
Because the media is talking about this everywhere. The member for Laval-Les Îles said to TVA that he would explain his involvement in this scandal, which is currently being studied by UPAC. But my question, Mr. Speaker, now is on the Prime Minister's decision to choose Mike Wiseman to become the next ambassador for Canada to the United States, knowing very well that Mike Wiseman has already said that he was the creator of the Century Initiative, which wants to see 100 million people in Canada in 2100. And he said that he didn't care what Quebec had to say about it. And Mr. Wiseman is against supply management. Can the Prime Minister change his mind and not appoint Mark Wiseman as ambassador?
So they're talking about Mark Wiseman, not Mike. I'm not sure if that's a translation thing, but...
The Honourable Minister for Canada-US Relations. Mr. Speaker, for the fourth time, our colleague is lucky. His question was in order this time, yet he has some challenges with the facts. He's talking about people who are not in the government, public policy that is not government policy. He knows very well that our government supports supply management. Under no circumstances will we negotiate supply management with the Americans. So despite what he's trying to do, we understand that the facts are still a bit loose here.
So they're once again doubling down supply management. As the Quebec pension plan here, CDPQ, one of its top investors is none other than Brookfield. So I don't think supply management's going anywhere anytime soon. They're not going to rock this boat because they need those voters in Quebec. But as for Mark Wiseman, who knows? He's an oddball here. He doesn't seem to have the same connection to Quebec as Mark Carney or Francois-Philippe Champagne or Michael Sabia or Marc-Andre Blanchard.
As we head into 2026, what else will you be watching for?
I'm going to be keeping an eye on the key negotiations with the United States. We just did a very good piece there about our outstanding. Really, I mean, the word outstanding is not an exaggeration in the case of Kirsten Hillman. I think it's a tragedy that we're losing her at this time. But as she said herself, she had no intention of sticking around until the end of the CUSMA, Canada-US-Mexico negotiations. And she said, Mr. Carney should be able to put in place somebody who's going to be there that long. That, by the way, is the quintessence of Kirsten Hillman. She's thinking about Canada. She's thinking about the future. She's not thinking about herself. So she's going to step aside. And looks like Mr. Carney's already got his pick. Figures, well, somebody else a little bit like him, you know, banker type, somebody who's been in charge of pension funds. It's going to be very controversial. It'll be contested vigorously in Quebec, because if it indeed is Mark Wiseman, he has said things that have really not gone over well in Quebec at all about Quebec. And
that's what I mentioned at the beginning. So you're retweeting Andrew Coyne's tweet there. I don't know if there's other things he's said, but clearly if he's retweeting that, he doesn't give a crap about Quebec.
And Carney's going to have to be somewhat aware of that. He doesn't pay a lot of attention to national unity issues, but this one could really tip the balance in favor of the Parti Québécois provincially and the Bloc Québécois federally. So he's going to have to at least understand what he's doing and what it could imply for Quebec. With regard to Wiseman himself, no experience whatsoever as a diplomat. Maybe that's a good thing. And, we'll see if the
that just follows suit for the Liberals here. They have people in all of these positions as ministers who have no idea what they're doing. On the flip side, if you look at the Conservatives, who are they putting on these committees? For example, the Standing Committee on Health. They've got guys like Matt Strauss, a literal doctor, criticizing the Liberals.
Banking credentials and his contacts are the type of thing that can help him get an in to get to the end game with Trump and the people around him.
So that'll be something.
No, Mark Wiseman's credentials, him also being a Mr. Banker, isn't going to help relate to Donald Trump. This is a Century Initiative guy. Donald Trump is the opposite of the Century Initiative. His ICE agents are going around rounding up the goblins and goons in America and chucking their butts out of the country. They're not going to mesh at all unless they're all in this together to build up America's economy. So time will tell to see what really happens here.